Hello everyone and welcome to CareersTalk. I'm Sunan Sharma, an Agile consultant based in Netherlands, and today we are going to discuss Scrum Master questions asked at Accenture, shared by one of our WhatsApp group member. And to help us with the answers, we have invited Tineke. Now, let me tell you interesting fact about her. She is married to an Indian and she is based in India. Yes, friend. So don't be confused. Yes, and yeah. So before we begin, if you are new here, please subscribe to our channel. We have tons of valuable content for all of you. And if you find this session informative, which I'm sure you will, please hit that like button. So without further delay, let's get started. Let's dive in. Welcome, Tineke. Tineke, over to you.
Hey, Sinan, thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to our interview questions. And fun little fact about me, I joined Sinan's course about a year ago for the Scrum Master training. And it's really great hands-on training and you get so much experience. Really recommend anyone who is curious to reach out to him and get his coaching. And yeah, for me, it's been given a lot of value. And yeah, looking forward to our session today.
Thank you. And it's not a paid promotion, right?
No.
Okay. So thank you for that. Okay, so let's get started. So the very first question is, during your daily scrum, two developers, they really contribute and they use like some vague language. So I think which is a common problem with a lot of teams. So how are you going to address this kind of issue and how you are going to improve the team communication? Over to you, Tenika.
Yeah. So first off, it's really important, like coming back to the agile principles. We really need to make sure that we are valuing transparency, collaboration, and making sure like our team can be self-organized. So when a developer is really quiet or they're answering big questions, it just makes it harder for the team to adapt, especially over time. So I was working on a logistics tracking project and we had some remote team members. And I remember like there was a time when one of the developers was, saying, I'm working on the same, no update, I'm just working on the same thing. And they didn't share any blockers, they didn't share any specifics, and there was like no coordination going on. So as a Scrum Master, I really needed to create a space where they felt comfortable sharing. And you really have to enforce clear and specific ways to help them to communicate. So one thing that I did is I pulled them together or pulled my developer with a one-on-one and like not call them out on the team, but just figure out privately and understand like what's going on. Why are they being so vague? Maybe they felt like their update wasn't worth it, or they're just unclear about the daily scrum. Like, what is the point in all of this? So after kind of getting their insight, I bring it up in the team retro so we can all discuss and make sure we're all on the same page. And just like talk about like what makes a good daily scrum. So in this instance, I suggested let's follow a format for some time so that we can get into the groove of it. So something that you could suggest as a Scrum Master is like, yesterday I worked on this, today I'm going to focus on this, and I need help. Because we're talking about planning for the next 24 hours, right? So it's important that everyone brings their updates. And yeah, so basically making sure that you are clear on the benefit of your daily scrum. And say like, even after that, you're getting a vague answer. Something I might follow up on is like, could you give, like someone might say, I'm updating the API. I would say, could you give an example on what part of the API you've been working on, right? So kind of giving those small, simple follow-up questions to keep that conversation rolling between the team. Yeah, so like within a week after getting that format done, the people who were quiet started giving the updates, and team was able to be more precise and adapt faster, and there was less like delays with us being able to work together.
Wonderful. Okay, wonderful, Tineke. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Okay, then let's move on to our next question. So let's say during a sprint planning, two of your developers are debating or having some heated argument about a technical approach. So how you are going to manage this kind of conflict, and you have to ensure that your planning is more productive.
Right. I would say that my approach is to create a space for healthy disagreement. But I also have to protect the meeting and facilitate that we're staying on progress. And I don't think that necessarily you need to force a consensus on the spot in the sprint planning. Sometimes, you know, discussions need a little bit more time. But we have to understand that it's not just about the two people who are like dominating the meeting, right? We have a lot of other goals that we need to consider. So for example, like in a high stake environment, you know, where performance and scalability really matters, when two developers are debating or even fighting about the technical direction, you know, that really shows that they care. One, but if it escalates, it can derail the meeting, right? So we have to make sure that we take a step back. I would, as a scrum master, I would say like, okay, it's clear you guys really care, but let's take a minute to zoom out and really understand what's our sprint goal, and remind them that the sprint goal is like, you know, something that we need to focus on now, but let's take this conversation out on the side, maybe following this meeting, and create a time box window where you both can collaborate and come up with a hybrid approach, or maybe someone, or, you know, try someone else's approach. Let them figure out what is best, because they have that technical ability. And I, as a scrum master, believe in their ability and trust that they make the best judgment and they can come to a consensus. Yeah. So like in situations like this, I really lean on agile values, especially like in collaborating and delivering work. We need to make sure that our team is focused on what we're trying to achieve and not just how we're trying to achieve it.
Okay, that's wonderful. Just want to add very quickly a small thing over here. So as you also mentioned, right, that we have to uh, calmly intervene with these kind of things. So as you mentioned, okay, let's take a step back for a moment. It sounds like we have two valid perspective here, and we want to make sure that we give both a fair hearing. So this help to diffuse the tension, and it
Yeah.
give both the team members a moment to regroup emotionally, which is very much needed at that time. And of course, you can remind the team members and the team that okay, sprint planning is all about aligning on what we will deliver and how we will do it together. So let's find a solution that good for the team and not just about being right. That's very important to communicate. And then you can ask them, perhaps maybe like we can ask each developer to briefly summarize their approach. So for example, what are the pros and the cons of this approach? What are the risks involved, and how much effort is involved, right? So we should encourage others to listen actively and also contribute. Maybe you can use some whiteboard or some visual board to visualize the trade-off, right? So that will be helpful. And next, I would say open the floor, involve other team in decision making. So what the rest of you think? Are these concerns or preferences based on our team's goals and capacity, right? So divert discussion in that kind of thing and involve your team members. So this will shift the debate from a two-person standoff to a team decision. So that
Yeah.
will definitely going to help. And then there, of course, there are you have as a scrum master, I think you can uh, if still that a common consensus is not forming, maybe you suggest some structure approach. So for example, time box a decision, let's say 10 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever minutes, and maybe we can use some criteria. So for example, maintainability or the velocity impact or some technical debt or things like that. Maybe we can also vote, or maybe we can come up with a spike if needed, right? So all these things I think we can do. Maybe we can do a follow-up outside the sprint planning as well. maybe we assign a short spike to compare both the approach. So yeah, all these things are great. And as you mentioned that, okay, you can always tell them that, yeah, I value your passion. You can have a meeting with them one to one, separately or both together. You can tell them, yes, that's great that you are passionate about, you love to give your inputs, but in all these kind of sessions meeting, we need to keep the discussion respectful and productive. So let's try to find a better way to disagree more constructively in future, something like that. So I think, yeah, that's input from my side. I hope you in line with that.
Yeah,
Okay.
100%. That's really great comments.
Okay, wonderful. So let's move on. The next question is, developer ask that who will going to coordinate work between multiple scrum teams. They all are working on a single product, right? So how you are going to respond to their concerns?
Yeah, so I would say coordination is key here when you're dealing with multiple teams, and especially when they're working towards the same product goal. Each team is self-organizing, but we need to make sure like there's alignment across the board. And by we, I do mean that, because no single person is gonna be in charge of that. You know, it's all about collaborating. So we use our network to collaborate and create some kind of structure that we can all be aligned towards the product, and that each team is not like getting siloed into their own tasks, into their own ideas. And what happens is there might be like repetition going on, right? So we want to avoid that. So one of the things that we should take into consideration is the product owner, right? There might be one product owner who is in charge of all of this, and there's one product backlog, and they're working on refining, right, based on each of the teams. Or maybe there's multiple product owners for each team, but their product goal is the same, right? So we need to make sure like that everything is broken down and distributed logically, whether it's by the function or the technical part. Everything is broken down and the backlogs are getting refined consistently. Another thing that we can use in this situation is Scrum of Scrums. So we could have the Scrum Masters from each team, or technical lead could be a developer, even the one who's showing interest in this idea. I think they would be a great candidate to step forward in the Scrum of Scrums. And what it is you could meet one time or 2 or 3 times a week. And it's basically like a lightweight framework for everyone to bring up what they're working on. Are there any blockers? Do they foresee any dependencies? And that way you can catch that early on, and just like keep the communication really open and allow for coordination. And this like Scrum of Scrum should be really quick and focused. It's not like a huge planning session, right? It's a sharing session. The other thing is we focus on the definition of done. It's a shared document. And so the expectations on the quality and like what we're delivering, it should be consistent across all the teams. Another thing you can open, like besides the Scrum of Scrums, maybe you open a Slack channel. Maybe we have a Slack channel where we're bringing up our concerns, or, hey, I think, you know, this is relating to your team. Can we talk about it, or can we coordinate about it? It might be like you have a team demo that another team member is sitting on, or you're having cross-team retrospectives together. I would say like this coordination isn't a top-down approach, like who's managing it? Like we are in charge of managing it, and especially working with the product owner to get that quality information and clarity, right? That's really important. So like all in all, I think it's about not adding more meetings necessarily, but just adding some structure that we as a group, as a collective towards this product, that we're able to be aligned and deliver, right, with the least amount of blocks and the least amount of repetitions, and that we're not disjointed, that we are working as a collective group towards a goal.
Wonderful. Absolutely, Tineke. Great. I think you have covered all the important points. Just a small point from my side that we have to make it clear to that individual, whoever is asking this question, that yes, all these roles help, but it's everyone has a stake. So
Right.
ultimately, it's a shared responsibility. I think you also mentioned. So Scrum Masters help with process alignment, product owner align the goals, and the developer should identify and communicate the inter-team dependencies proactively. So we have to encourage them to raise the blocker early. We have to encourage them to attend some inter-team things and Scrum or Scrum and things like that. We have to also encourage them to use tools like shared backlog or integration boards or some dependency matrices and things like that. So that's the one point I just want to add. Otherwise, I think you have covered all the points about PO, Scrum of Scrum, shared definition of done, stacks, and then yeah, coordination and things like that. Wonderful. Thank you, Teneke. Let's move on. Okay, so shall we move on?
Yeah, yeah, sounds
Yeah.
good.
Okay. Okay. So the next question is, let's say your team is waiting for some external suppliers to deliver some software component, and your PO is unsure like how to reorder the product backlog. So what advice or help would you give to your product owner?
Yeah, so I mean, this situation comes up, and um, usually we try to foresee this risk, like that there could be a delay. But
Mhm.
you know, things happen, life happens. And in this case, my advice is, all right, this delay is happening, but how can we still create value, right? One is we have to keep transparency with our stakeholders and with the team. So I think an easy way to communicate these kind of technical problems or technical delays is in Jira. We can tag certain story points where there are dependencies. So like that there's a visual aid there, and also kind of and talk it through. And also we can look for items in the backlog that are independent to the supplier's delivery, right?
Correct.
Maybe we could shift and work on a UI or testing infrastructure, or maybe we're working about this software delivery, but it's in a sandbox environment, right? So we're might be preparing for when it's ready. Yeah, basically finding those independent items in the backlog. Another thing is we could do like a tech spike, or where you have, you know, a short time box research activity to prepare for integrations and test assumptions, so that again, now that that delays there, you have certain assumptions, so we can make our estimations more
Correct.
accurate, right, to reduce that time. And yeah, basically bringing this would also be a good time to bring forward some other high value backlog items that had been deprioritized earlier, and that, you know, the stakeholders would still really appreciate. And that way we can continue to be delivering value despite a delay.
Correct. Wonderful. I think, yeah. So yeah, as you mentioned, just to summarize, that's okay. While we wait for external component, we can tell our PO that okay, let's focus on backlog. What's immediately extendable, as you also mentioned. Maybe we can unblock some team flow. Maybe we prepare for integration or some technical depth. The idea is like deliver value where possible. We
Yeah.
can spread the blocked stories. We can create some mock external components or things like that. Maybe you can communicate, work on some risk. So there are a lot of things which we can work on. Great. Tineke, thank you for that. I think you have covered all the points. Wonderful. Okay, so let's move on. So next question is, let's say suddenly one of the developer suggests you to remove some, let's say regression testing from the definition of done. So how you are going to manage this kind of suggestions, and how you will ensure that the integrity of your definition of done is intact?
Right. The first question I would ask is, walk me through what's behind your suggestion for, let's just say, he wanted to remove regression testing from the definition of done. Is this developer hitting some kind of bottleneck? Is there an issue with the current process that maybe they're getting anxiety about not hitting a certain time frame, right? What's not working about the current process that you feel that you want to suggest that, right? At the same time, in this conversation, it's really important to talk about the integrity and upholding the integrity of your definition of done. And that regression testing, or let's just say testing, right? It helps us to avoid surprises later. And like without it, we would be trading, short-term speed, but in the long term, we could be facing a lot of issues, a lot of technical debt buildup, a lot of surprises and uh-ohs. And our point in this team is to make sure our client is getting quality work, right? We're having giving iterations of their idea and quality work, right? So that definition of done is there to uphold our quality, and it's a shared commitment. So it's not just like a technical check mark. It's a shared commitment that this is how our team operates, and these are our standards. Another thing I would bring up is I would bring this up in our retro, because if it's on this person's mind, maybe it's on other people's mind and they haven't spoken up about it, right? So maybe, I would figure out like, okay, this is a blocker. This has come up as a blocker. What do you guys feel about it? What do you think about it? How are you handling it? Is the regression process too heavy? Is it too manual? And then in retrospective, we could open up a dialogue and say, is there any part of it maybe we could automate? And that it's maintaining the quality, but increasing the speed, the amount of time that it's taking, right? Something like that might happen then in the discussion. And the important thing is to come to the root cause for this suggestion. But in finding the root cause, we have to always protect our quality and evolve our definition of done. So we could evolve it, like if we find a better process in the regression testing, for example. That would be my take. Yeah.
Correct. Absolutely. So in the last, just like we have to protect our core quality standards at any cost. So if the suggestion undermines the product integrity, don't compromise on the important part. So I would say like, yeah, while we can improve how we do the regression testing, removing it entirely would put our product quality and the customer trust as risk, right? So yeah, as a suggestion to remove regression testing, I think, as you also mentioned, it's an opportunity for us to understand the pain points, educate on value, and collaboratively work to improve the process part, not to reduce the quality part, right? Maybe some kind of automation or something that can be part of automation. Maybe we can reduce the scope of the regression testing based on some defined risk and things like that. Can some tool or pipeline can improve the speed, things like that. So we can come up with alternatives, but not the omission. That's the point, I think. So yeah, I think that's wonderful, Denike. Apart from that, I just added one point. Great. So before we move on, a small again appeal, friends. We are halfway through our session, and if you're still watching, I don't see any reason that you will not going to subscribe. If you're a Scrum Master, you will find tons of valuable insight, lot of information on our channel. So please do subscribe, and of course, don't forget to like this session. Okay, with this appeal, let's move on to our next question. And next question is, let's assume that you have a multiple teams, and all those multiple teams are working on one product. So how would you ensure that requirements are distributed effectively and efficiently among all the team members?
Great question. So we have to make sure that we're clear there's open communication and of course alignment when you're distributing requirements. And I would say for this, it's really important to give teams ownership and while staying aligned on one product and not a bunch of like one product team and not a bunch of siloed teams, right? Working in parallel. So one thing that you could do is a scrum of scrums again. This could be maintained to like match all the puzzle pieces together and, you know, reduce redundancies and find the best fits in teams. It could also did we already answer this question or did I?
No, you're not answered.
Oh.
It's a kind of similar, I think, which we have asked earlier.
Okay,
but
okay.
yeah,
I'm just
this is
feeling
the
am I being too repetitive here? Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Mm.
Or if you want, we can skip this as well.
I think skip. I think I'm like too repetitive from the last one.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
So let's skip it. Now I have to cut this. Okay. So thank you, Tinike, for that answer. Okay, let's move on to our next question. And the next question is, so let's say your team member suggests having a daily scrum on an alternative day due to remote work and other things. So what concerns would you raise about lowering the frequency of daily scrum?
Well, okay. I mean, I understand, you know, remote work meetings can feel heavier when you're not in person, like around other people, but the daily scrum is more than just a status meeting, right? It's a meeting designed for the developers to inspect their progress towards their sprint goal and plan for the next 24 hours, right? So in remote setups, I think that the daily scrum is even more important because it's that daily ritual where we all come together as a team, where we're able to engage and connect quickly. We start the day with that, right? And cutting that in half throughout the week, you know, one, it's increasing your isolation, and two, lowering morale, which we don't want that. But also without that daily touch point and you want to cut it in half, we risk like having more small misunderstandings and those turning into big blockers, especially in fast moving environments. Like even a day's delay, it's really hard to catch up and it kind of creates like a snowball effect. So the point of our daily scrum is to catch that and nip things in the bud, right? Nip those blockers straight away. And in Agile, like we really value transparency. If we meet less often, developers miss the opportunity to adjust their plans and understand what else everyone is facing, like what's going on in the team, right? And with these blockers, like this could also lead to more rework, and that's more time, more effort, more money. And these are all the things which we want to avoid. So, I mean, I would say like this is something that I don't compromise on, Scrum Masters don't compromise on. It's really important. Like it's a 15-minute max meeting. And we make sure that we don't let the meeting bleed over. And I would just explain that with this, we're able to respond to change much faster. A lot can happen in a day. Priorities can change. You might get a customer feedback. And if you're waiting 24 hours just to adjust, it just slows our agility, which is the opposite of what we want. Yeah.
Absolutely. So just to add a little bit from my side, as a Scrum Master, please reaffirm the purpose of a daily Scrum. Start by reminding the team why the daily Scrum even exists, right? So daily Scrum is not just a status meeting, it's a daily opportunity for the team to inspect the progress towards the sprint goal, right? And adapt the plan and align on any blockers, right? So reducing the frequency will weaken all these things. It will, as you mentioned, it will weaken the transparency, it will weaken the team alignment, and our ability to spot and address the impediment early will also be weakened, right? The opportunity for continuous collaboration, especially when you're working in a remote setup, will be also weakened, right? So highlight the risk of less frequent syncs, as you also mentioned that okay, we will miss and there will be a delay in the blockers. The team will be, will we have challenging meeting the sprint goals. There will be a miscommunication, duplication of work, slower responses to some unexpected changes and things like that. So I think the idea is address the underlying issue. So if the team wants to reduce the frequency, let's ask why. Is it the meeting is too long, or it's unfocused, or is it like there's a feeling that it's a status reporting to a manager, or are the time zones or the tools making it harder for them, right? So if the format is not an issue, then frequency is again not a problem, right? So I think we have to fix the format if format is the issue and not the event itself, right? So check whether the format is the issue or is it something else. And of course we can improve the quality of our daily scrum. So we can um, coach the team that okay, we have to keep it short, 15 minutes max. It should be driven by team, not by the scrum master. We should focus on what was the done, what we will going to done, any blockers and things like that. And optionally we can have some follow up after the call for some deeper topics or deeper discussion, right? So make it more like a value adding, so the team wants to attend rather than maybe offer some flexibility in format, not on a frequency. So maybe they can use a video or a voice or some other, maybe a Slack or some Jira update when it's absolutely needed, but still meet synchronously at least once per day, if at all possible. So as you also mentioned that reducing the daily scrum will then there is a more risk of misalignment, delays and isolations and things like that, especially for a remote team. So yeah, we can tell them let's improve how we can run so it's focused, it's more fast and useful. So I think yeah, that's something which I just want to add on top of it, whatever you also mentioned. Okay, great. Shall we move on?
Yeah.
Okay. So the next question is on a sprint goal. So a team questions the need for a sprint goal, like why it's even there. So how you can explain that it's important and how you will ensure that the team understand its value.
Right. So, our goal as a team is to deliver working software, right? Frequently. This is not, it's not waterfall, right? So our having a clear sprint goal helps you ensure that we're delivering something meaningful and not just story points. In the end, the client doesn't care how many story points we're delivering. That's just something, for us to track. What they care about is what value we're bringing in each sprint to them. What is tangible? Like, what can they see? What can they understand that it's, solving their problems or their concerns. So the sprint goal, like, it can feel abstract, especially when you're deep into tasks as a developer. But what is important is that the sprint goal gives purpose beyond just checking off those tickets and completing your task. Without the goal, like, the team doesn't really know what matters. If your priorities shift or there's blockers or a delay happens, like we talked about earlier, the goal helps the team, the PO, all of us to decide what to drop, maybe what should be delayed, or how to adjust our work, or where we need to collaborate on. Without it, we might just end up doing a bunch of everything, like a little bit of everything, but delivering nothing cohesive. And we always want to make sure, like, we're prioritizing what value we're delivering. And to keep it like in higher perspective, the sprint goal connects the what to the why. So for example, I was working on an e-commerce project, and you could say like build a promo banner. That would be a task, right? But the actual goal is we want to improve the user journey for seasonal promotions. Now you have your why and your what connected. And that gives us a shared outcome and not just a task list.
Correct. Yes, absolutely, I agree with you. So basically, we have to explain what a sprint goal is all about. So sprint goal is a single objective, as you also mentioned, right? Which we have to aim to achieve during the sprint. So it's provide a shared purpose for the team, and it connects the work to a meaningful outcome. So it's not a to-do list, it is the why behind the work. So rather than, I mean, of course, we can emphasize the value of a sprint goal, that okay, it brings a focus and the alignment, it guides the decision during the sprint, it helps the team to self-organize around a common purpose, right? It also enables the team to adapt the scope while still meeting the goal if something has been changed, right? So it will bring that kind of flexibility within the boundaries. It will help to communicate with the stakeholder. So it will make it easier to explain sprint intent and progress to a product owner or a stakeholder, right? So without a sprint goal, we risk the sprint into a checklist rather than a coordinated effort to deliver something meaningful. So instead of saying that okay, we will complete 10 users stories, a sprint goal might be anything. For example, we need to enable a security reset password via the email or something like that, right? So this gives a clarity and the flexibility while still aiming for a valuable delivery. So as you mentioned that okay, involve the team in creating it. It also important that sprint goal is co-created, it's not imposed. Sometimes people thought that the product owner is going to give us, no, it's your as a team uh, output which you are supposed to give after your sprint planning, right? So let's the team help to define it based on the selected backlog items, and ask as a scrum master like what are we trying to achieve with this work, right? So if they help define the goal, they will care more about achieving it, right? And of course there are a lot of misconceptions that okay, yeah, yeah, okay, anyway, otherwise this will go endless, this session will be. Okay, let's move on. We have a lot of other questions, I'm not sure whether we are going to finish it of a given time. Okay, so let's go to the other one interesting question. Other next question is, let's say our team member believe that the scrum master is a management position. So how would you clarify the role and responsibility of a scrum master compared to a project manager? I would say management. Okay, let's see like
Yeah,
what is your
so
thought?
if I'm doing my job right, the team doesn't feel managed. They should be feeling empowered and they should be feeling supported. And I'm creating that safe space and protecting, you know, the opportunity for everyone to share their knowledge, their ideas, and come up with best practices. I can understand like some people might think that the Scrum Master is a manager. Sometimes we run meetings, we help with blockers, we work closely with everyone, but it's not a top-down managerial role. The Scrum Master isn't here to assign tasks or tell people what to do. I'm more like a coach and a facilitator. So like you said, like you're asking those questions, involving people in the product goal. What do they think about it? How are we trying to achieve? I think being a Scrum Master, you're asking those important, interesting questions that helps people to get involved, and also like being able to feel comfortable if a blocker comes up. So I think like in a lot of top-down managerial positions, people feel really shy. They feel scared they're gonna get in trouble, especially if they quote unquote fail. And I think in Scrum, it's okay to fail fast and learn from your mistakes. And okay, that happened, but this is what we're doing to mitigate that. And in the next sprint, we're going to deliver something even better. We adjusted ourselves. And yeah, so I also think like it's just that communication is much more horizontal and collaborative. And my job as a Scrum Master is to help the team and support the team by removing obstacles and helping everyone stay aligned with those agile values, and making sure that Scrum is working for us. And if there are concerns, like the questions we've been coming up in this interview, those questions come up, and so it's our job to coach and make them understand, like, why are we having a daily Scrum? Like, what is the point? What is the value that you should be getting out of it? And if not, like, let's work together and let's find ways to collaborate and make sure that you feel heard and feel understood and you're growing, and not just going through the motions. That would be my take.
Okay, great. So yeah, on top of it, as you also mentioned, tell them what the Scrum Master does not do. The not do is very important. So
True.
tell them that they do not assign task, as you mentioned. They
Yeah,
will not give the performance reviews. That's very important to tell them. Hmm?
a
And
good point.
they will not going to make a technical or a business decision. That's again an important thing which we have to tell them. And we will not dictate the team process. Yes, we will enable the team to shape it, but we will not dictate the team process. So the team decide how to do the work. The
Yeah.
Scrum Master ensure that the framework is followed and that nothing stands in their way. That's it. And perhaps maybe you can use one or two analogies that will help. So tell them that, okay, think of a Scrum Master like a compass, not like a commander or like a gardener. They don't grow the plant, but then they create the right condition for it to thrive, right? So they help the team to navigate, but they don't steer the ship themselves. It's you, developer, who is going to do that, right? So I think on top of it, whatever you just said, just use some analogies to make them understand your role as a Scrum Master and what you are not going to do. So half of their fears will be gone for sure.
Yeah, I'll have to
Okay.
save that. I'll have to save that.
Okay. Wonderful, Tenike. Okay. So let's move on to our next question. Okay. So the next question is you need to demonstrate that the agile practices are working for your organization. So what indicator would you use to show the success? Tenike?
So show that Agile is really working. I'd focus on key indicators like your sprint goal achievements, your cycle time, velocity, escape defects, and stakeholder satisfaction. So both mixing, technical tracking and also taking into account people. Um, I'd also highlight like team engagement as a sign that Agile is creating a healthy and sustainable environment. And that's something that we can track in retrospectives and just get team feedback. It's not just about following those Agile rituals. It's showing like how we're delivering value consistently, how we're able to adapt quickly and improve quality over time. So for example, you have your sprint goal achievement rate. This allows our team to like track our team's ability to deliver valuable and focused outcomes consistently. So we use sprint planning, we have defined goals, we have time box sprints, and our daily scrum to align and remove blockers. Another thing I would showcase is our cycle time and lead time. So that means like how quickly we are taking a request from a client or stakeholder and turning it from a to-do to a done. We can do this by limiting our work in progress. You can see this in Kanban, where you have a limit in work in progress, and making sure we're doing continuous refinement and prioritization in the product backlog. And our definition of done is complete and has clear and consistent standards. Another great one we can use is velocity stability. So this helps to show like our team rhythm, our predictability over time, and like how consistent we are in providing value. One thing that we use is like we can estimate story points, so that should become more accurate over time as we're learning to work together. And then we have our sprint retrospectives where we're inspecting and improving delivery flow, and yeah, having like cross-functional handoffs. Escape defects, which I mentioned earlier, is like we make sure that we use like test-driven development or automated testing. We have regular definition of done performance testing and do frequent reviews and feedback loops. And for the people side, we have our stakeholder satisfaction. So we can get their feedback. Are we building the right product? Are we adapting to their feedback? It's not just about what our team thinks is right, but what's actually, what they're responding to, and are we making them happier over time and providing that value consistently? And of course, coming back to our team, we can use retrospectives or even internal surveys and track like our team morale. How are people feeling? How are things going? How are we handling blockers, or how are we pivoting from maybe something that was challenging and learning from it, and keeping that engagement with the project and with the team, with each other, and that we're building trust over time. So one thing is you have your sprint retrospectives for continuous improvement. And as a Scrum Master, you are a servant leader. You're that model for the team to, like I said, create that safe space and make sure that as a Scrum Master, I'm enabling self-organizing teams, and that we have shared ownership and autonomy. So I know that was a big answer, but these are all really important KPIs that we can share to upper management or people who are, not used to Agile. These are all kinds of really useful trackers and ways that we can show Agile is really useful and providing value, and that, we're able to adapt as fast as possible. And especially in this age, like that is becoming more and more valuable as technology is just coming up with new things every single day. And I think like, I think if you're a Scrum Master, these are all really valuable KPIs that you can present to leadership and also show your team and track over time, and something to look back on.
Wonderful, Tenike. Thank you for giving that elaborated answer. Just to add very quickly, I know it's already like hour is almost gone. So apart from whatever you said, that's wonderful. But apart from that, I think we can also look direct value which we provide to the client and the end users, and how we can do that. Maybe perhaps some customer testimonies or some feedback. So let's get some real quotes or some stories showing that how the product helped them to solve the problem, or at least improve their experience, right? How many user actively use the new feature or the product, or if we can measure like how easy is for the customer to use or to get help from our product, right? And maybe we can also showcase some business related matrices, like okay, our product helped them to reduce the support calls or faster onboarding time or things like that, or it helped them to increase the sales, things like that. So all this will contribute towards the direct value to the client and the end user. And of course, as you mentioned, the team perception, right? So ask your team members how they feel about the agile processes, the collaboration, the workload, the empowerment, and the things like that. Summarize or come up with that retrospective feedback different based on different themes. Summarize like what the team feels what are the things which are working for them or where they need improvement, right? Things like
Yeah.
that. And the last thing is about the leadership. So we should also check the pulse of our leadership, ask them, feedback, gather some qualitative feedback, that okay, how the leadership perceive agility impacting their business goals, or whether
Mhm.
it's helping in managing different risk, right? Gather those kind of evidence of the leaders, whether they are attending the scrum events or not, whether they are backing your agile initiative or not, whether they are helping you to remove some organizational related impediments or not, right? So I think all these things also bring that kind of success stories which we are looking for. So that's very quickly I just want to add, yeah, I mean, of course it's a big topic altogether.
Mhm.
So I think it's time for you to take a rest. I think it's a continuous 1 hour session, so of course we are going to do a second session soon, Tineke. So with this, like, thank you, Tineke, and thank you, friends, for joining us for today's session. And we hope you found it helpful and informative. And if you enjoy the session, if you find it valuable, please don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to our channel. And we hope to see you in our next session very soon. Until then, take care. This is Sunan Sharma signing off along with Tineke. Thank you, everyone, and bye bye. Thank you, Tineke.
Thank you.